The night my son came home with nothing but a suitcase and 2 sleeping children in his arms. I knew the miracle we'd celebrated 6 months earlier had been a lie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Hello. My name is Mary Johnson, and I live in Downers Grove, a quiet suburb about 25 miles west of Chicago. I'm 67 years old now, though some days I feel much older. I run a small bakery on Main Street, nothing fancy, just the kind of place where people stop for coffee and a cinnamon roll on their way to work. My husband Tom passed away 8 years ago. He was a police officer for 32 years. Good man, honest man, the kind who couldn't stand liars. I think about him a lot these days. I have one son, Chris. He's 38, tall like his father, with the same careful way of moving through the world. Never rushed into anything. Tom used to joke that Chris checked the weather forecast 3 times before deciding to wash his car. That patience made him good at what he did: auto repair. He owned a small shop in Naperville, specialized in classic cars and trucks. People trusted him because he never oversold a job or cut corners. Chris married Irene 12 years ago. She was a nurse at Edward Hospital in Naperville, pretty in that careful way some women are always put together, always camera ready. I remember the wedding. Small ceremony at the courthouse, then dinner at a nice Italian place. Irene smiled a lot that day, but I noticed she barely touched her food. I didn't think much of it then. They had 2 children. Leo, who's 10 years old now, serious and quiet like his father. Sophia, 8, who laughed at everything and collected rocks she found interesting. Those kids were the center of Chris's world. He coached Leo's little league team even though he knew nothing about baseball. He let Sophia paint his fingernails purple on Saturdays. That's the kind of father he was. The bakery opens at 6. I'm usually there by 4:30, starting the first batch of bread. The rhythm of it helps me think. Measure, mix, knead, wait. There's honesty in bread. You can't rush it or fake it. Either you do the work or you don't. It was a Tuesday morning in March when Chris called me. 7:15. I was pulling out the second tray of croissants. Mom, can you sit down? His voice sounded hollow, scraped out. I turned off the oven and sat on the metal folding chair by the back door. Irene has cancer, he said. Uterine. Stage 3. The words didn't make sense at first. Irene was 36. She ran half marathons. She posted pictures on Facebook of green smoothies and yoga poses. Are they sure? I asked. 3 different tests. Dr. Morrison at his clinic confirmed it yesterday. His voice cracked. Mom, they're saying she needs surgery right away, then chemotherapy. The treatment plan is. He stopped. I heard him breathing. It's $270,000. I gripped the phone harder. What about insurance? They're calling it experimental protocol. Won't cover it. But Mom, this is her only chance. The regular treatment has a 20% survival rate. This new program, they're seeing 70–80%. I closed my eyes. Behind me, the radio was playing something cheerful. I reached back and turned it off. What do you need from me? I asked. Nothing. I'm selling the shop. And the house. It's already decided. That was Chris. Once he made up his mind, you couldn't move him. Over the next 3 months, I watched my son dismantle his entire life. He sold the repair shop to a competitor for less than it was worth because he needed cash fast. He sold his truck, the vintage Mustang he'd restored, even his wedding ring. He moved Irene and the kids into a small apartment in Naperville, closer to the clinic. I helped where I could. Took the kids to school. Made dinners. Sat with Irene during the early appointments when Chris had to work his new job driving for a construction company, 10 hours a day, to keep money coming in. Irene was brave about it all. She cried sometimes, apologized for being a burden. She held Chris's hand during the consultations and told him she'd fight as hard as she could. The kids didn't understand everything, but they knew Mom was sick. Sophia drew pictures of families holding hands under rainbows. Leo stopped talking as much. The treatment was brutal. Irene lost weight, lost her hair. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Chris would call me at 5 in the morning, his voice ragged from no sleep, and ask if I could come stay with her while he took the kids to school. I always said yes. I'm not proud of this, but there were moments when I wondered. Small things. The way Irene always seemed worse right before a major payment was due. The way she'd rally enough to post smiling photos online, but collapse the moment the camera was gone. I pushed those thoughts away. What kind of person suspects someone of faking cancer? Then in June, Morrison called Chris with news. The cancer was gone. Complete remission. They were calling it a miracle. I was at their apartment when Chris told Irene. She started crying. Chris started crying. The kids jumped on the couch screaming. I stood in the doorway and cried too, though part of me felt sick with shame for ever doubting her. We had a celebration dinner at the apartment. Pizza and cheap champagne. Sophia made a banner that said, "Mom wins." Leo gave a speech about how his mom was the strongest person in the world. Chris couldn't stop holding Irene's hand. I went home that night and sat in my kitchen for a long time. The house was quiet, too quiet. I thought about Tom, about what he would say if he were here. "Mary," he'd tell me, "trust your gut. It's kept you alive this long." But my gut had been wrong, hadn't it? Irene was cured. The doctors confirmed it. I'd let my suspicions poison something beautiful. I decided to let it go. That was my mistake. Because 2 weeks later, Chris called me again. It was almost midnight. I was already in bed. "Mom," he said, "something's wrong." His voice sounded different. Not sad. Not scared. Confused. Like someone waking up from a dream they couldn't quite remember. "Irene wants a divorce. She's taking the kids. She's taking everything." I sat up, turned on the light. Outside my window, I could hear rain starting to fall. "Chris, slow down. What happened?" "I don't know. She just changed. After the treatment ended, she started going out, buying new clothes. She says she deserves a fresh start." He paused. "She says I'm too boring. That she almost died and now she wants to actually live." I got dressed, drove to his apartment through the rain. But by the time I got there, Irene was already gone. She'd taken the kids to her sister's house in Schaumburg. She'd filed papers that morning. Chris sat on the couch in the dark. The banner Sophia made was still hanging on the wall. "Mom wins." I sat next to my son and didn't say anything. Sometimes there are no words. The divorce happened fast. Irene's lawyer was expensive and aggressive. Chris's lawyer was someone he found online who worked on payment plans. By August, it was over. Irene got the apartment, half of what little money remained, and primary custody of Leo and Sophia. Chris got weekends, every other holiday, and a massive hole where his life used to be. On a Thursday night in late August, during a thunderstorm that knocked out power to half the county, I heard a knock on my door. I opened it. Chris stood there, soaked through, holding an old suitcase in one hand. Leo and Sophia were asleep in his car behind him, covered with his jacket. "Mom," he said, "can we stay here tonight?" I looked at my son. At the rain running down his face. At everything he'd lost. You can stay as long as you need, I told him. He nodded. Didn't cry. Didn't say anything else. I helped him carry the kids inside. Put them in the guest room. Made up the couch for Chris. At 2 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. I went downstairs and found him sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing. She's alive because of you, I said quietly. He looked up at me. His eyes were red but dry. I know, he said. And I'd do it again. For her. For them. He paused. I just wish it had mattered. I sat down across from him. Wanted to say something comforting. Something a mother should say. But Tom's voice was in my head again. Trust your gut. And my gut was screaming that something about this whole thing, the miracle, the divorce, the timing was wrong. I didn't say that to Chris. Not yet. He'd lost enough. But I decided something that night, sitting in my kitchen while my son grieved and his children slept upstairs. If there was a truth to be found, I was going to find it. Even if it broke everything all over again. Chris and the kids stayed in my house for 3 weeks before I noticed the pattern. Every Sunday at 6 p.m., Irene would pull up in a car I didn't recognize, a new silver Lexus with temporary plates. She'd honk twice. Chris would walk Leo and Sophia to the curb, kiss them goodbye, and watch until the car disappeared around the corner. Then he'd come back inside and sit in the living room without turning on any lights. The 4th Sunday, I was watering the plants by the front window when she arrived. This time she got out of the car. I hadn't seen her in person since before the divorce. She looked different, healthy. Her hair had grown back, darker and thicker than before. She wore designer sunglasses and a leather jacket that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. She was laughing at something on her phone. Not the laugh of someone who'd barely survived cancer 6 months ago. The laugh of someone who'd never been sick at all. I set down the watering can. Chris opened the door. Leo and Sophia ran past him with their backpacks. Hey, babies. Irene's voice was bright, musical. She hugged them both, but I noticed she checked her phone over Sophia's shoulder. Chris stood on the porch. They have a science project due Tuesday. Leo needs help with the poster board. I know how to parent, Chris. Her smile didn't move. Anything else? Sophia's been having nightmares. She might need. I said I've got it. Irene opened the car door. Come on, guys. We're going to Navy Pier. The kids climbed in. Irene got behind the wheel. She glanced up at Chris one more time, and I saw something in her face that made my chest tight. Not anger. Not regret. Something colder. Satisfaction. She drove away. Chris stayed on the porch until I couldn't see the taillights anymore. That night, I made chicken soup. Chris ate half a bowl and pushed the rest around with his spoon. She's different, he said finally. I waited. Before the cancer, she was, I don't know. Softer. She used to worry about things. About me working too much, about the kids' school, about whether we were saving enough. He set down his spoon. Now she doesn't worry about anything. It's like she became someone else. People change after trauma, I said carefully. That's what her lawyer said. Chris laughed, but there was no humor in it. That surviving cancer gave her a new perspective on life. That I should be happy for her. I picked up our bowls and carried them to the sink. Outside the window, I could see the bakery sign glowing 2 blocks away. I'd forgotten to turn it off again. Chris, can I ask you something? Yeah, the hospital bills. Do you still have the paperwork? He looked up. Why? Just curious. About the treatment plan. What they actually did. He shrugged. Everything's in storage. The lawyer said to keep it all for tax purposes. He stood up. I'm going to bed. Early shift tomorrow. After he went upstairs, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The house made settling noises around me. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked. I thought about Tom, about the way he used to spread case files across this same table, looking for the detail that didn't fit. The receipt that was wrong. The timeline that didn't make sense. When something feels wrong, he used to say, it usually is. You just have to find the proof. But I didn't have proof. I had a feeling. And feelings don't hold up in divorce court. The next morning at the bakery, I burned a whole batch of scones. I was measuring flour for the second attempt when my phone rang. Chris. Mom, I need advice. I wiped my hands on my apron. What happened? Irene called. She wants to change the custody arrangement. She says the kids should stay with her full-time. That I can have them one weekend a month. His voice was shaking. She says I can't provide a stable home because I'm living with my mother and working construction. I closed my eyes. Can she do that? Her lawyer thinks so. My lawyer says we'd have to go back to court, and that costs money I don't have. He paused. Mom, I can't lose them. They're all I have left. You won't lose them. How do you know? I didn't, but I said it anyway because that's what mothers do. That afternoon, I closed the bakery early and drove to the storage facility where Chris kept his boxes. The unit was small and smelled like cardboard and dust. I found the medical files in the third box I opened. I spread everything across the concrete floor. Bills from Morrison medical specialists. Treatment schedules. Insurance denial letters. Prescription receipts. I'm not a detective. I don't know what I was looking for. But I read every page. The bills were enormous. Detailed. Each line item had codes and dates and doctors' names. Surgery $84,000. Chemotherapy cycle 1 $22,000. Radiation therapy $31,000. On and on. Everything looked legitimate. But then I noticed something. The bills all came from the same place, Morrison Medical Specialists, a private clinic. The address listed was in Evanston. I pulled out my phone and searched for Morrison Medical Specialists. The website looked professional. Photos of doctors in white coats. Testimonials from patients. A clean, modern office building in downtown Evanston. I called the number listed. It rang 4 times. Then a recorded message. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. I tried again. Same message. I drove to the address on the website. It took 40 minutes in traffic. The building existed a 6-story glass structure near the train station. But when I checked the directory in the lobby, there was no Morrison Medical Specialists listed. Just accounting firms and law offices. I asked the security guard. He was young, bored, playing something on his phone. Morrison Medical? Never heard of it. How long they been here? 6 months. Maybe a year. He shook his head. Nah, I've worked this desk for 3 years. No medical office in this building. I drove home slowly. My hands felt cold on the steering wheel. When I got back, Chris was in the driveway throwing a tennis ball for a neighbor's dog. He looked tired. He always looked tired now. Chris, where did you meet Dr. Morrison? He threw the ball. What? Dr. Morrison, the specialist. Where did you first meet him? I didn't. Irene set up all the appointments. She said he was the best, that her supervisor at the hospital recommended him. The dog brought the ball back. Why? Just wondering. I went inside before he could ask more questions. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the building in Evanston. The disconnected phone number. The way Irene had looked in her new car, laughing at her phone, completely healthy. The way she'd looked at Chris with that cold satisfaction. At 2 a.m., I got up and made tea. Sat at the kitchen table where Tom used to work his cases. I pulled out the medical bills again and read them under the overhead light. My husband used to say that the truth is always there. You just have to be willing to see it. I was starting to see something. I didn't want to believe it. The shape of it was too terrible. Too cruel. But Tom also used to say that the cruelest people are often the smartest ones. Because they understand exactly what they're taking from you. Irene had taken everything. The money, the house, the kids. And she'd done it by making Chris believe she was dying. No, I put my head in my hands. That was impossible. You can't fake cancer. There were doctors, tests, hospitals, bills. But there was also a clinic that didn't exist. A phone number that didn't work. A woman who recovered impossibly fast and immediately wanted a divorce. I needed proof. Real proof. Not just suspicion and disconnected phone numbers. The problem was, I didn't know how to get it. The next Sunday, Irene picked up the kids again. Same silver Lexus. Same designer sunglasses. But this time, a man was in the passenger seat. Younger than her, gym fit, wearing an expensive watch. She didn't introduce him. Just honked and waited. Chris brought the kids to the car. Leo looked back at his father 3 times before getting in. Sophia was crying. I don't want to go, she said. Daddy, please. It's just for the week, baby. I'll see you Friday. Chris knelt down and hugged her. Be good, okay? Irene leaned out the window. We're going to be late. Chris kissed Sophia's forehead and opened the car door. She climbed in slowly, her face pressed against the window. The Lexus pulled away. Chris stood there watching. He didn't move for a long time. I walked out to the driveway. Who was that? I asked. I don't know. His voice was flat. Probably her new boyfriend. We stood there together. The street was quiet. Somewhere a lawnmower was running. Chris, I said, I need to tell you something. He looked at me. I opened my mouth, closed it. If I was wrong, I would destroy whatever peace he'd managed to find. If I was right, I would destroy him anyway. What is it, Mom? I thought about Tom, about truth, about the cruelest people being the smartest ones. I think we need to look into Irene's treatment, I said. Something doesn't add up. He frowned. What do you mean? The clinic where she was treated. I tried to find it. It doesn't exist. Chris stared at me. That's not possible. I drove her there. Multiple times. Where exactly did you drop her off? He thought about it. The medical building on Sherman Avenue in Evanston. The one with the parking garage. Did you ever go inside with her? A few times. At the beginning. He paused. But then she said it was too depressing. That she needed to be strong, and having me there made her cry. The pieces were fitting together. Slowly. Terribly. Chris, I think we've been lied to. He shook his head. No, I saw the medical records. The bills. The bills from a clinic that doesn't exist. Then where did the money go? His voice rose. I gave them $270,000. Where did it go if she wasn't sick? That was the question, wasn't it? We stood in the driveway. The sun was setting behind the houses across the street. Everything looked normal, peaceful, but underneath, I could feel something breaking open. I don't know, I said. But I'm going to find out. Chris looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, he said. Tell me what you need. That night, I made a list. All the things that didn't make sense. All the questions I couldn't answer. The disconnected phone. The missing clinic. The impossible recovery. The immediate divorce. And I made a decision. Tom spent 32 years putting criminals in prison. He knew people. Good people who knew how to find the truth. I still had his old contact book in the basement. Names and numbers of everyone he'd ever worked with. Tomorrow, I would start making calls. Because if Irene had faked her cancer, if she'd taken my son's entire life and built it on a lie, then she hadn't just hurt Chris. She'd committed fraud, theft, maybe worse. And if there's one thing I learned from being married to a cop for 40 years, it's this. Every crime leaves evidence. You just have to know where to look. Tom's contact book was in a cardboard box in the basement, buried under old tax returns and Christmas decorations we never used anymore. I found it on a Tuesday morning before opening the bakery. The leather cover was cracked and faded. Inside, pages of names written in Tom's careful handwriting. Partners, informants, lawyers, private investigators. Most of them were probably retired by now. Or dead. I flipped through slowly. Anderson, Berkowitz, Chen. Names I half remembered from dinner conversations 20 years ago. Then I found it. Benson, Larry, private investigator. Below it, a phone number and an address in Oak Park. I remembered Larry. Big guy, loud laugh, always wore cowboy boots even in winter. He'd come to Tom's funeral. Shook my hand and said if I ever needed anything, call him. That was 8 years ago. But it was the only lead I had. I called the number at lunch. It rang 6 times. I was about to hang up when someone picked up. Benson. The voice was rough, like he'd just woken up. Larry? This is Mary Johnson, Tom Johnson's wife. Silence. Then, Mary. Jesus. How long's it been? 8 years. 8 years. He coughed. How you holding up? I'm okay. Listen, I need help with something. Something Tom would have handled if he was still here. Another pause. What kind of something? The kind that might be fraud. Or worse. Tell me. So I did. All of it. The cancer diagnosis. The treatment. The money. The divorce. The clinic that didn't exist. Larry didn't interrupt. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You still have the medical paperwork? Yes. Bring it to my office tomorrow. 2 p.m. And Mary? Yeah? If this is what you think it is, it's going to get ugly. You sure you want to open this door? I thought about Chris. About Leo and Sophia crying in that car. About Irene's cold smile. I'm sure. All right then. See you tomorrow. I hung up. My hands were shaking. Larry's office was above a pawn shop on Madison Street in Oak Park. The stairs were narrow and smelled like cigarettes. I knocked on the frosted glass door marked, Benson Investigations. It's open. Inside, the office looked like something from an old movie. Metal desk. Filing cabinets. A coffee maker that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in years. Larry sat behind the desk, bigger than I remembered, grayer, but the same sharp eyes. He stood up when I came in. Mary. Larry. We shook hands. His grip was still strong. You look good, he said. You're a terrible liar. I set the box of medical records on his desk. Here's everything. He sat down and started going through the papers. Didn't say anything for almost 20 minutes. Just read, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. Finally, he looked up. This clinic, Morrison Medical Specialists. You said it doesn't exist? The address is real, but there's no medical office there. The phone number is disconnected. Larry wrote something down. And your son never met this drive. Morrison directly? Irene handled everything. Said it was too hard for Chris to see her in pain. Convenient. He leaned back in his chair. It creaked under his weight. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Either this clinic existed and shut down, or it never existed and we're looking at a sophisticated scam. Either way, money went somewhere. We need to find out where. How do we do that? I've got a friend at the county clerk's office. We'll start with business registrations, see if Morrison Medical ever filed paperwork. Then we'll check the bank records on these payments. See who cashed the checks. Chris paid everything electronically. Direct transfers. Larry smiled. Even better. Electronic transfers leave trails. Might take a few days, but we'll find where the money went. He paused. This is gonna cost you, Mary. My rate's $200 a day plus expenses. I'd expected that. The bakery made enough to cover it. Barely. That's fine. All right then. He stood up and held out his hand again. I'll call you when I find something. I shook his hand. Started to leave. Then I stopped at the door. Larry? What if we're wrong? What if she really was sick and I'm just? Then we'll find that out too. His voice was kind. But Mary? In 30 years of doing this work, I've learned one thing. When someone's story has this many holes in it, there's usually a reason. I drove home, made dinner, tried to act normal. Chris asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was doing the right thing, wondering what would happen if Larry actually found something, wondering what would happen if he didn't. 3 days later, Larry called. Mary, we need to talk. In person. Did you find something? Yeah, but not what I expected. Can you come to my office? Now? I'll be there in 30 minutes. I drove fast. Too fast. My heart was pounding the whole way. When I got to Larry's office, he wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before sat in the chair across from Larry's desk. Thin, maybe 50, cheap suit that didn't fit right. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks. Mary, this is Philip Harris. Larry's voice was careful. He has something to tell you. I looked at the man. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Who are you? I asked. Philip's hands were shaking. He clasped them together to make it stop. I worked at Morrison Medical, he said quietly. Accounting department. My breath caught. So the clinic is real? No. He looked up at me finally. His eyes were red. The clinic never existed. None of it was real. The room tilted. I sat down hard in the chair next to him. Then what? It was a scam. Philip's voice cracked. We made it all up. The diagnosis. The treatment plan. The bills. Everything. Larry was watching me carefully. Philip came to me this morning. Said he saw the inquiry I made about Morrison Medical and had to come forward. Why? I looked at Philip. Why are you telling me this now? He was quiet for a long time. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. Handed it to me. It was a woman. Dark hair. Pretty smile. She was sitting in a hospital bed. That's my wife. Catherine. Philip's voice was barely a whisper. She had a heart condition. Needed surgery. We didn't have insurance. I was desperate. I looked down at the photo. Looked back at him. Irene came to me with a proposal, he said. She'd been planning it for months. She knew I had access to medical billing systems from my job at a real clinic. Knew I could make official-looking documents. She said we could help each other. Help each other how? She would fake a cancer diagnosis. I would create all the paperwork. Hospital bills, treatment schedules, test results, everything. Her husband would pay for the treatment, and we'd split the money. I'd use my share for Catherine's surgery. The air in the room felt thin. I couldn't breathe right. How much? My voice didn't sound like mine. She took $270,000 from your son. Philip was crying now. I got $50,000. The rest went to the others. What others? The fake doctors. The people who helped set up the temporary office space. Irene kept most of it. He wiped his eyes. I used my share for Catherine's surgery. But there were complications. She died 3 weeks later. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. I killed my wife trying to save her. And I helped destroy your family in the process. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The photograph was still in my hands. Larry's voice cut through the silence. Philip came forward because Irene cut him out. Stopped returning his calls. He's broke now and scared. But he's willing to testify. Give us everything. I looked at the man crying next to me. Part of me wanted to hate him. Part of me understood exactly why he'd done it. Where is she now? I asked. Irene? I don't know, Philip said. She moves around. Changes apartments every few months. Uses different names sometimes. But you know how to find her. He nodded slowly. Maybe. She has patterns. Places she goes. People she works with. Larry leaned forward. Here's the problem, Mary. I can take all this to the police. But without hard evidence, bank records, paper trails, witnesses beyond Philip, it's going to be tough to prove. Irene's smart. She covered her tracks. So what do? We build a case. Find the others who were involved. Track the money. Get everything we can before we move. He looked at Philip. You're going to help us. Every detail you remember. Every person you met. Every document you created. Philip nodded. I'll tell you everything. His voice broke again. I just want to do the right thing. Finally, we sat there in that small office above the pawn shop. The three of us. A widow. A detective. A man who'd lost everything trying to save the person he loved. Outside, rain had started to fall. I could hear it against the window. Steady. Relentless. We need to tell Chris, I said finally. Larry shook his head. Not yet. If he confronts Irene, she'll run. We need to be smart about this. He deserves to know. He will know. When we have enough to put her in prison. Larry's eyes were hard. This woman destroyed your son's life for money. Let's make sure when we move against her, she doesn't get away. I thought about Chris at home. About how he'd look when I told him the truth. About how it would break him all over again. But Larry was right. We had one chance to do this right. Okay, I said. What's next? Next, Philip gives us names. We track down everyone involved. We find where the money went. And we build a case so tight that when the police finally arrest her, she won't be able to talk her way out. Philip looked at me. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was. You're right, I said. You don't deserve forgiveness. But you can still help fix this. He nodded, pulled out a small notebook from his pocket. Started writing names. I watched him write. Watched the rain get heavier outside. Thought about Tom and what he would say if he were here. He'd probably tell me to be careful. To let the professionals handle it. To think about my own safety. But Tom also taught me that sometimes the right thing is the hard thing. And the hard thing doesn't wait for permission. I drove home through the rain. The windshield wipers could barely keep up. Everything was gray and blurred. When I got back, Chris was in the kitchen making sandwiches for the kids' lunches tomorrow. Leo was doing homework at the table. Sophia was drawing. Hey Mom, Chris said. You're soaked. Where were you? Just running errands. I hung up my wet coat. How was your day? Fine. Same as always. He looked tired. He was always tired now. Sophia came over and showed me her drawing. It was our house. All of us standing in front of it, holding hands. In the picture, everyone was smiling. That's beautiful, sweetheart, I said. It's for Mommy, she said. For when she comes back. My chest tightened. Honey, Mommy's not. She will, Sophia insisted. She said she would. When she's done being busy. Chris looked at me over her head. The pain in his eyes was unbearable. I knelt down and hugged Sophia. Held her tight. "Why don't you make one for Daddy too?" I said gently. "I bet he'd love that." She nodded and ran back to the table. Chris and I stood there in the kitchen. The faucet was dripping. Somewhere upstairs, the heater kicked on. "She asks about her every night," Chris said quietly. I don't know what to tell her anymore. I wanted to tell him everything. About Philip. About the scam. About how it was all a lie. But Larry's voice was in my head. "Not yet. When we have enough to put her in prison." So instead I just said, "Tell her the truth. That her mommy loves her. Even if she's confused right now." It wasn't a lie. Not exactly. Irene probably did love the kids in whatever way she was capable of loving anyone. She just loved money more. Chris nodded. Went back to making sandwiches. I went upstairs to my room. Sat on the edge of my bed. Outside, the rain was still falling. Hard and cold. I thought about Philip's wife. About how she died trying to be saved by money that came from destroying someone else's family. I thought about Irene. About how much she must hate Chris to have done this to him. Or maybe she didn't hate him at all. Maybe that was worse. Maybe he was just a means to an end. Money in a bank account. Numbers on a screen. Tom used to say that the worst criminals are the ones who don't feel anything. Who can look you in the eye and lie without flinching. Irene was one of those. And now I knew the truth. The question was, what was I going to do about it? Larry called me 6 days later. "We found it," he said. "All of it." I was at the bakery, pulling bread from the oven. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the tray. Found what? The bank accounts. The fake business registrations. The office space they rented for 3 months to make it look real. His voice was tight with controlled anger. "Mary, this wasn't just Irene and Philip. This was an organized operation. At least 6 people involved." I sat down on the metal stool by the oven. "Tell me." They set up Morrison Medical Specialists as a shell company. Rented a small office suite in that Evanston building, furnished it to look like a medical clinic. Had business cards printed. Built a website. The whole thing. For how long? Just long enough to convince Chris it was real. 3 months of treatment, then they packed up and disappeared. Philip created all the billing documents. A guy named Edward Sanders played the doctor. They even hired actresses to pretend to be nurses and receptionists. My stomach turned. Actresses? Philip gave us names. We tracked down 2 of them. They thought it was legitimate medical roleplay for training purposes. They had no idea it was fraud. Larry paused. The money went through 4 different accounts before landing in Irene's personal account. She withdrew most of it in cash over 6 months. Untraceable. How much is left? Maybe $30,000. She spent the rest. New car. Clothes. Apartment deposits. Trips. She burned through $250,000 in less than a year. I closed my eyes. What now? Now we go to the police. I've got a contact in the fraud division. Detective Maria Gonzalez. She's good, and she owes me a favor. He hesitated. "Mary, once we do this, there's no going back. They'll investigate. They'll arrest people. It's going to be messy." "Do it. You sure?" I thought about Chris. About Sophia's drawing of her mother coming home. About Leo's silent pain. "I'm sure." "All right. I'll set up a meeting for tomorrow morning. 9 a.m. at the station. Can you make it?" "I'll be there." I hung up. Stood there in my empty bakery. The bread was getting cold on the counter. I should have felt relieved. We had evidence. We had witnesses. We had everything we needed. But all I felt was tired. That night, I told Chris I had a doctor's appointment in the morning. He offered to cover the bakery. I said yes. I didn't sleep. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I'd say to the detective. How I'd explain everything. At 8:30 the next morning, I was sitting in Larry's office. He'd dressed up actual slacks instead of jeans, boots polished. "You ready for this?" he asked. "No, but let's go anyway." The police station was a gray concrete building on Harrison Street in Oak Park. Inside, it smelled like coffee and disinfectant. Larry led me through a maze of hallways to a small conference room. Detective Gonzalez was already there. Younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and no-nonsense energy. She stood up when we entered. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm Detective Gonzalez. Please, sit." I sat. Larry sat next to me. Philip was already there, hunched in a chair against the wall, looking like he wanted to disappear. "Larry's given me the basics," Detective Gonzalez said. "But I need to hear it from you. From the beginning." So I told her. Everything. The cancer diagnosis. The treatment. The bills. The divorce. The clinic that didn't exist. She took notes the whole time. Didn't interrupt. When I finished, she looked at Philip. "Mr. Harris, you're willing to testify to all of this?" Philip nodded. His voice was barely audible. "Yes. And you understand you're admitting to conspiracy to commit fraud? That you'll likely face charges yourself?" "I understand." Detective Gonzalez turned back to me. "Mrs. Johnson, I'm going to be honest with you. This is a strong case, but it's complicated. Your son willingly transferred the money. He signed documents. Technically, he entered into a contract for services." My heart sank. "But the services were fake." "Yes. But proving that in court means proving intent to defraud. We'll need to find the other conspirators. Get them to talk. Build a timeline. It could take months. I don't care how long it takes." She studied me for a moment. Then nodded. "Okay. We'll open an investigation. In the meantime, I need you to not contact Irene. Don't warn her. Don't confront her. If she finds out we're investigating, she'll run." "What about my grandchildren? They're with her half the time. Are they in any danger?" I wanted to say yes. But the truth was, Irene had never hurt the kids. Not physically, anyway. "No," I admitted. "Then for now, everything stays normal. Can you do that?" I nodded. "Good." Detective Gonzalez stood up. "I'll be in touch. Larry has my direct number. If anything changes, call immediately." We left the station. Larry walked me to my car. "This is good, Mary. We did the right thing." Then why'd I feel worse? He didn't have an answer for that. I drove home. It was just past noon. The bakery was closed. Chris's truck was in the driveway. I walked inside and found him at the kitchen table. His face was white, hands clenched. "Chris?" He looked up at me. "Where were you?" "I told you. Doctor's appointment." "Don't lie to me, Mom." My chest tightened. "What?" He stood up, pulled out his phone, held it up so I could see the screen. It was a text message. From Irene. "Your mother's investigating me. Tell her to back off or she'll regret it." I stared at the message. "How did she?" "I don't know. But she knows. And she's threatening you." His voice cracked. "What the hell is going on, Mom?" I sat down slowly. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. "Chris, I need you to listen to me." "I'm listening." Irene was never sick. The cancer was fake. All of it. The words hung in the air between us. Chris stared at me. "That's not possible." "It is. I have proof. Witnesses. Bank records. Everything." "No." He shook his head. "No, I saw the medical reports. I drove her to appointments. I watched her lose her hair. Wigs, Chris. Makeup. Acting." My voice was steady now. "Calm. She staged the whole thing with a group of criminals. They took your money and disappeared. This is insane. He was pacing now. You're telling me she faked cancer? For money? Yes. For months? Every day? Every appointment? Yes. He stopped pacing, looked at me. How long have you known? A week. Maybe less. I didn't tell you because the police said. The police? You went to the police without telling me? His voice rose. This is my life, Mom. My family. And you went behind my back? I was trying to protect you. I don't need protection. I need the truth. He grabbed his jacket off the chair. I'm going to see her. Chris, no. She's with my kids right now. If what you're saying is true, I need to hear it from her. He headed for the door. I grabbed his arm. Chris, please. If you confront her, she'll disappear. The police need time to build a case. He pulled away. I don't care about a case. I care about my children. And what are you going to do? Accuse her of faking cancer? She'll deny it. She'll call you crazy. And then she'll take those kids and you'll never see them again. That stopped him. His hand was on the doorknob. She already took everything else, he said quietly. What more can she take? Your children, Chris. She can take your children. We stood there. The silence was suffocating. Finally, he turned around. What do you need me to do? Nothing. Act normal. Keep the custody schedule. Don't let her know we know. For how long? As long as it takes. He walked past me, went upstairs. I heard his bedroom door close. I stood in the kitchen alone. Pulled out my phone. Called Larry. She knows, I said when he answered. Irene knows we're investigating. How? I don't know. But she just threatened me through Chris. Larry swore. I'll call Gonzalez. We might need to move faster than we planned. How much faster? I'll find out. Stay by your phone. He hung up. I sat at the kitchen table. The same table where Tom used to work his cases. Where I'd read medical bills and tried to find the truth. The same table where everything had started to fall apart. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Hello? Mrs. Johnson. Irene's voice. Calm. Almost friendly. We need to talk. My blood went cold. I have nothing to say to you. Oh, I think you do. See, I heard you've been asking questions. Making accusations. That's not very nice. You stole from my son. She laughed. Actually laughed. I didn't steal anything. He gave me that money willingly. Out of love. That's not a crime. Fraud is. Prove it. Her voice hardened. You can't, can you? Because there's nothing to prove. I was sick. I got better. Chris and I got divorced. That's all. We have witnesses. You have a desperate man who would say anything to save himself. That's all. She paused. Here's what's going to happen, Mrs. Johnson. You're going to drop this little investigation. You're going to tell your detective friend it was all a misunderstanding. And you're going to stay out of my life. And if I don't, then I'll file for full custody. I'll tell the court that Chris is mentally unstable. That you're both harassing me. That my children aren't safe. Her voice was ice. I'll take them away, and you'll never see them again. My hands were shaking. You wouldn't. Try me. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it. She was calling my bluff. And she knew exactly what would hurt most. The kids. I called Larry back. Told him everything. She's scared, he said. That's good. Scared people make mistakes. She threatened to take the kids. She won't. Not if we move fast enough. He paused. Gonzalez is getting a warrant. They're going to raid the last known address for Edward Sanders, the fake doctor. If we find evidence there, we can arrest everyone by end of week. And if we don't find anything? Larry was quiet. Then, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. That night, I couldn't eat. Couldn't think. Just sat in the living room staring at nothing. Chris came down around 10. Sat next to me on the couch. "I'm sorry," he said. "For yelling earlier. You had every right." "No, I didn't." He looked at his hands. "You were trying to help. I can't believe she'd do this. Any of it. I know. The kids, Mom. What am I going to tell the kids? The truth. When the time comes. They love her. I know." We sat there in silence. Outside, a car drove by. Its headlights swept across the walls. "Dad would have known what to do," Chris said. "Your dad would have handled this the same way. Carefully. By the book. But he would have been better at it. Maybe." I put my hand on his. "But he's not here. We are. So we do the best we can." Chris nodded. Squeezed my hand back. My phone buzzed. Text from Larry. "Raid is tomorrow. 6 a.m. I'll call you after." I showed Chris the message. "What happens if they find her?" he asked. "Then she goes to prison. And the kids? Come home to you." He closed his eyes. Leaned back against the couch. "I want to hate her," he said quietly. "I want to hate her so much. But part of me still loves her. I know. How'd I stop?" I thought about Tom. About the years after he died, when I'd lie in bed missing him so much I couldn't breathe. "You don't stop," I said. "You just learn to carry it differently." We sat there until after midnight. Neither of us sleeping. Neither of us moving. Just waiting for morning. For the truth to finally break open. For whatever came next. The raid happened at 6 a.m. on a Thursday. I wasn't there. Larry told me later what it looked like. 12 officers. 3 unmarked cars. They surrounded a warehouse in Cicero that Edward Sanders had been using as a base. Not a medical clinic this time. Just a large empty space with folding tables and file boxes. Inside, they found everything. Fake medical documents. Blank prescription pads. Business cards for clinics that didn't exist. And a USB drive with videos. Larry called me at 7:30. "We got them," he said. "All of them." I was standing in my kitchen. The coffee pot was on, but I'd forgotten to put coffee in it. Just hot water dripping into an empty pot. "Irene?" I asked. "In custody. They picked her up at her apartment 20 minutes ago." He paused. "Mary, the video's on that USB drive. You need to prepare yourself." "For what?" Irene practicing. Rehearsing her symptoms. Laughing with Edward about how convincing she was. There's footage of her coaching other people to run the same scam on their families. I sat down. The chair felt too hard beneath me. How many others? At least 4. Maybe more. This wasn't her first time, Mary. She'd done this before. To other people. Other families. I thought about Chris upstairs, still sleeping. About how this would destroy him all over again. What happens now? Arraignments this afternoon. Edward's lawyer is already talking about a plea deal. Philip too. But Irene? Larry's voice hardened. She's not talking. Got herself an expensive attorney. She's going to fight this. Can she win? No, not with the evidence we have. But she'll drag it out. Make it ugly. I thanked him and hung up. Chris came down 10 minutes later. Saw my face. "They found her," I said. He nodded slowly. Didn't look surprised. Just tired. "What about Leo and Sophia?" "Temporary custody stays with you. Child Services will do a wellness check, but they're safe." "Where are they now?" "At Irene's sister's house in Schaumburg. She called me an hour ago. Said she didn't know about any of this. Said she's bringing them home today." Chris sat down across from me. We didn't say anything for a long time. Finally, he spoke. I don't know how to tell them. We'll figure it out together. The trial took 8 months. 8 months of depositions and hearings and lawyers. 8 months of watching Chris sit in courtrooms, his face blank, while prosecutors presented evidence of how Irene had systematically destroyed his life. Edward Sanders took a plea deal. 20 years. Philip got 2 years for cooperation and showed genuine remorse throughout the process. The others got between 5 and 8 years each. Irene's trial lasted 3 weeks. Her lawyer tried everything, said she was coerced, said Philip had manipulated her, said the evidence was fabricated. The jury didn't believe any of it. 12 years in federal prison. Restitution ordered, though there was almost nothing left to recover. Chris didn't attend the sentencing. Said he'd heard enough. But I went, sat in the back row and watched Irene stand before the judge. She looked smaller somehow, older. The expensive clothes and perfect hair were gone. Just a tired woman in an orange jumpsuit. When the judge asked if she had anything to say, she looked right at me. "I'm sorry," she said. I don't know if she meant it. I don't think I'll ever know. But I nodded anyway. Leo and Sophia learned the truth slowly. In pieces. Chris sat them down after the arrest and told them their mother had made serious mistakes. That she'd hurt people. That she had to go away for a while. Sophia cried for days. Stopped drawing pictures. Stopped talking much at all. Leo got quiet. Quieter than before. Started having nightmares. We got them into therapy. A kind woman named Drive Chen, who specialized in family trauma. She told me it would take time. That kids are resilient, but they're not unbreakable. A year after the trial, I reopened my bakery. Not the same bakery. A new one. In a better location on Maple Avenue, with bigger windows and more light. I named it Sunrise Bakery. Because every morning, no matter how dark the night before, the sun comes up. Chris worked there with me at first. Just part-time, helping with the early morning bread. But then he found a small garage space 2 doors down. Started taking on repair jobs again. Word got around that he was honest, reliable. Slowly, the business grew. He smiled more. Not often, but more. The kids adjusted. Sophia started drawing again. Different pictures now. Not families holding hands. Just landscapes. Trees. Birds. Open skies. Leo joined the robotics club at school. Made a few friends. Still didn't talk much, but he seemed calmer. They asked about their mother sometimes. Chris always told them the truth, as much as they could handle. She made bad choices, he'd say. But she's still your mom. And it's okay to miss her. Sophia wrote her letters sometimes. I don't know if Irene ever wrote back. On a Tuesday afternoon in October, 18 months after the trial, someone knocked on the bakery door. It was Philip Harris. He looked different, thinner, gray hair cut short, cheap jacket, worn shoes. He stood outside the glass door, hesitating. I walked over and opened it. "Mrs. Johnson," he said quietly. "I'm sorry to bother you. I wanted to apologize. In person. For everything." I studied his face. Saw genuine remorse there. Genuine pain. "You already apologized. At the trial." "I know. But I needed to say it again. To you. Face to face." He looked down. "I served my time. Got out 3 weeks ago. I'm trying to find work, but... Are you asking me for a job?" He looked up, startled. "No. God, no. I wouldn't. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. That's all." I thought about Tom. About forgiveness. About second chances. "Can you lift 50-pound bags of flour?" Philip blinked. "What?" "I need someone to do deliveries. Early mornings. 5 days a week. Minimum wage to start. I crossed my arms. But if you steal from me, if you lie to me, if you give me any reason not to trust you, you're done. Understood? He stared at me. You're serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Mrs. Johnson, I don't deserve. You're right. You don't. But my son didn't deserve what happened to him either, and he's still here. Still working. Still trying. I held his gaze. Everyone deserves a chance to do better. Question is whether you'll take it. Philip's eyes filled with tears. Yes, I'll take it. Good. Start tomorrow. 5 a.m. He nodded. Wiped his eyes. Thank you. I watched him walk away. Wondered if I was making a mistake. Wondered what Tom would say. But I think he'd understand. Because punishment isn't the same as justice. And justice isn't the same as healing. Sometimes healing means letting people earn their way back. Chris wasn't happy about it at first. When I told him I'd hired Philip, his jaw tightened. Mom, he helped destroy our family. I know. And you're giving him a job? I'm giving him a chance. There's a difference. Chris shook his head. I don't know if I can forgive him. You don't have to. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I put my hand on his shoulder. But someone has to start breaking the cycle. Might as well be us. Philip showed up at 4:50 the next morning. Every morning after that too. Never late. Never complained. Worked hard and kept his head down. Customers liked him. He was polite, careful with their orders, remembered their names. 6 months later, Chris walked into the bakery after closing. Philip was sweeping the floor. They looked at each other for a long moment. Then Chris held out his hand. Philip stared at it, then shook it. They didn't say anything. Didn't need to. Some forgiveness happens in words. Some happens in silence. It's been 3 years now since all of this started. Leo is 13, tall like his father. Still quiet, but he laughs sometimes. He's building a robot for a state competition. Chris helps him in the garage after work. Sophia is 11, still draws constantly. She wants to be an artist. Or a veterinarian. Or both. She changes her mind every week. That's okay. She's allowed to dream. The bakery does well. We added 3 more employees last year. Chris's garage is booked solid most weeks. Philip manages the delivery route now and has started talking about maybe going back to school. Irene is still in prison. She'll be eligible for parole in 7 years. I don't know if the kids will want to see her then. That's their choice to make. I think about her sometimes. Wonder if she regrets it. Wonder if she thinks about what she threw away. But mostly I don't think about her at all. Because I've learned something these past 3 years. Something important. Revenge isn't about destroying the person who hurt you. It's about building something they can't take away. Irene took Chris's money, his house, his business, his marriage. But she couldn't take his children. She couldn't take his dignity. She couldn't take his ability to start over. And she definitely couldn't take his family. Every Sunday now, we have dinner together. Me, Chris, Leo, Sophia. Sometimes Philip joins us. We eat at the big table in my dining room. The same table where I used to sit with Tom. Where I read medical bills and tried to find the truth. The table that's seen so much pain is now covered in laughter and food and the ordinary chaos of family. That's the revenge I chose. Not prison sentences or restitution payments. Those things matter, but they're not what healed us. What healed us was this: getting up every morning. Making bread. Fixing cars. Going to school. Drawing pictures. Living our lives despite everything that tried to break us. Irene wanted to destroy us for money. Instead, she taught us what we're made of. The sun's coming up now. I can see it through the bakery windows. Golden light spreading across Maple Avenue, touching the buildings, warming the glass. In an hour, I'll unlock the door. The first customers will come in, smelling fresh bread and coffee. They'll smile and chat and go about their days. They won't know the story of this place. They won't know what it took to build it. And that's okay. Because some stories aren't meant to be told to everyone. Some stories are just meant to be lived. This is mine. This is ours. And every morning, when the sun rises over Sunrise Bakery, I'm reminded that no matter how dark the night was, dawn always comes. You just have to be brave enough to see it. Thank you for listening to my story. For staying with me through all of it, the pain, the struggle, the small victories that finally added up to something like peace. If this story touched you in any way, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe to Grandparents' Memories in Life, hit that like button, and turn on notifications. There are more stories to tell, more lives to share, and I'd love to have you with me for the journey. Take care of yourselves. And remember, no matter what you're facing, sunrise is coming.